And hello, Muller, and you are mute again. Not a problem. Welcome to the show. How are you, ma'am?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you reminded me that I'm muted. Hello,
Yeah, no
Singapore. How
worries.
are you today?
I am good. Thank you. It's been a busy day, busy week, but it's been fun. And for
Nice.
all of our friends who have logged into our show, welcome to the month of June for the Leadership in Flow Asia. So, what is this show about? This is a show where we quiz and talk and ask the leaders questions about actions that they've taken around personal growth, leadership growth, and organizational growth. And over we started this last year, February, and every month we are getting leaders who are coming in and sharing a lot of fantastic ideas that is making us think deeper. And they even provide thought-provoking ideas. It's been fun. It's been really fun. And welcome everyone to our show. And today, who do we have? For the month of June, our theme is adaptive leaders, right? And we're going to be having Aidilla Jeharey. We're going to call her AJ for short. My quick question to you, Malin, how did you meet AJ? And can you tell us a little bit about her before we bring her up?
Okay. Actually, I'm meeting her e-meeting in person. I would say literally first time through the
Okay.
show.
Okay.
But I met her in a platform called Momentum. Momentum. As I said it, I think AJ has gone missing. She'll join us shortly again.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
where did I meet AJ? So there, there's a platform. There's a group called Momentum. Have you heard of Clubhouse?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Okay. So during the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, what
Mm-hmm.
happened was, I became part of a group called Momentum. And
Okay.
what we used to do is we used to get together and share, right? And AJ was part of this Momentum group. And
Okay.
every time she spoke, I was inspired, right?
Nice. Wow.
Inspired by her passion for yoga, for mindfulness, for compassion. But what is different about AJ is this, right? I think we do meet a lot of people, who are passionate,
Mm.
who are passionate. Akash, okay, and now I lost my line because you put
I
that
know, I know, I
online
know.
dating
Akash
site,
tends to do that.
right?
Yes. Welcome, Akash. Welcome, Gerald. He says hello, Malarasho. Akash goes on to say hi, guys, and then he goes on to say met her on a professional online dating site.
Okay, now people are going to assume, Akash, you met AJ, okay? That's what's going to happen. But anyway, I'll let you resolve it while you're laughing about it. And I lost my line. So, AJ is amazing because what I absolutely loved about her is that she brought in ancient wisdom and she connected it to how science is bringing forth this ancient wisdom, is what I would say, right? And,
Okay.
she helped a lot of people connect the dots
Mm-hmm.
between what is really good for your well-being to science. And I think without further ado, I think we should bring AJ up here so that people get to experience her passion and her wisdom as we
Sure.
have in the
Yep.
show.
She's
Okay.
back, and let's bring her up.
Woohoo!
Hi, AJ. Okay, she's being mindful.
Hi, can you all hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
because I've had suddenly off and on. So in case I lose you or you lose me, I'm just gonna, go on the phone. Okay.
No worries, no worries. I
Hi.
totally get that.
Yeah, as we
Hi,
do that, if you go missing,
Okay.
I will
Hi,
try
every.
and make up for all the wisdom you've given us in the past. Yes, AJ, we can hear you.
Thank you. Hi. Okay. Hi, Mala. Hi, Ashok. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you
hi.
guys. It's
And
quite
Akash
interesting that
said
you're
he
in
has met you on a
Singapore, one in
professional
Malaysia.
online dating site before.
Well, I've not been on one, but who knows? And yeah, hello, Akash and Shamani. Nice
Okay.
to meet you.
Yeah,
And
Shami's up
yeah,
in the
hello
air.
from the UK. Yeah.
Okay, and thank you very much for that, AJ. AJ, Amala was sharing that she was deeply moved and inspired by your wisdom, your knowledge about mindfulness and all. I have a question for you to kick off the show, right? Can you share with us how your life has transformed with your pursuit of mindfulness, or because of your pursuit of mindfulness?
Interesting question. Well, I think in a way the transformation starts before mindfulness because mindfulness is a form of meditation, but not all meditation is mindfulness. So just to get that clear to everybody. So mindfulness is a form of mind training, a form of meditation. There's so many types of meditation. So my journey really started with yoga. Really, because we have a very strong tradition. We have a very strong of and I moved from yoga to yogic style and then moved towards mindfulness, which is more about practice based meditation or a contemplative practice. How it transformed me, maybe in recent years, but maybe more about.
Can you,
Can you hear me?
Ashok, can you hear AJ?
Okay, so AJ is coming in and out. I think there's a drop in the
Can you
Wi-Fi
hear
strength
me?
signal. We can hear you, but it goes up, down, in, out.
AJ, would you like to just check on your Wi-Fi because I think people are going to lose out on a lot of things that you're saying because your words and sentence are being swallowed. So as we say that, I
Okay,
don't know
I'm
which is
going
the
to
best.
move.
Okay,
Okay, I'm going to come back. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Sorry about
okay,
that.
maybe. No worries. I think AJ will be back, and maybe she will use her mobile to come back, and that's okay. So for those who've joined us, thank you for joining us. This is Malar and of course Ashok, and we are talking to AJ, uh, who specializes in mindfulness, I would say,
Yep.
but she's actually here, trying to connect the dot for us in
Hmm.
terms of how it actually matters in leadership today. And I
Sure.
think just now when she first started, she said they're not all meditation is mindfulness. Isn't that what she said, Ashok?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, it was just her opening statement, and I was like, huh,
Ah,
But what caught me was about the fact that she mentioned mindfulness is actually mind training, and I think that's a very good perspective. It's a very different perspective, and I love the perspective, and I like to ask her more about it. Yes, AJ, you are clearer, you are mindful.
okay,
Well, UK, Manchester is glorious today, and I think because it's glorious, there's a lot of work going on for network operators and stuff like that. So I
Sure,
think they
sure.
are working on something because their app is down as well.
No
So
worries,
no
no
worries.
as I was saying, let me just continue. So it transformed from yoga to more of contemplative practices, and again, as I was saying, that mindfulness is a mind training sort of practice, really, because it does train your mind, and because it affects certain parts of the brain regions, you can actually use use different types of meditation to work different parts of your brain region, actually, from focus attention, from just being an open awareness and that kind of stuff. So being in a yoga world, unfortunately, yoga world is quite, I wouldn't say quite competitive, not just competitive, can be quite hostile sometimes because it's so competitive that everybody's trying to grab, you know. So in the sense that hostile, that people are actually not very kind to one another, with teachers, with another teacher, yoga studio, with teachers and everything. So it's really quite crippling in terms of the industry for me. I find it very crippling because you're supposed to empower one another and you bring this well-being kind of thing practice to people, and yet we in the industry are totally not embodying the practices according to the philosophy. So when I move towards more of a Buddhist based practice, I find that it's a totally different environment where mindfulness is just an example, of course, but from there it leads you to compassion and other practices as well. So it transformed me in a way that I find that first and foremost, being a Malaysian, we always talk, or Southeast Asian, we're always talking, we never listen. Everybody talks, nobody's listening, which is good in a way, culturally, right? That's how we are. But it kind of brings this sense of stepping back and being a bit calmer for myself. I'm literally quite a chatty person if I get the right group of people. But I find that I'm more calm in looking at perspective of what people are telling me, and I'm more absorbing, or my listening ability is a little bit more different. I listen with different ears. I look at things from different eyes. And also because I suppose I also work with trauma survivors, that kind of like really changed my perspective of everything. And when it actually transform my life in a way that I look at people quite differently. I used to be scared to, for example, if I see someone limping, for example, right? I suppose years ago I'd be like, oh, I wonder what happened to that person. But I will never ask because I feel like I'm imposing. I feel like I'm going to say something that might be offensive to the person. But right now, if I see someone like that, I am actually quite comfortable to say, you know, I'm just curious what really happened to you and how does that affect your life, and why are you here? And I can really create some sort of a very comfortable, genuine and honest conversation with this person. Or even if someone is angry, I can actually open a conversation that I'm comfortable with, because I'm not seeing it from the front. I'm seeing it beyond that. Like if someone is angry, there is something behind that anger. There is pain. There is something that's unresolved. And I'm honestly, usually I feel like I can represent that honesty that I really want to know, not just beyond like you're angry. Yeah, use those days, if someone is angry, I'm like, oh my god, I'm annoyed, I'm angry, and from the person's angry, they kind of like emanate that power of anger, and we get angry as well. But
Mhm,
right now
mhm.
I'm able to like see that there's so much pain in the person. If someone is angry, wow, you are in pain. Do
Yeah,
you want to talk about it? How can I help? How can I create a safe space for you so that you can speak
right,
with me and feel safe? So
right.
that's very life transforming.
No, it is because what you just shared is a wow moment for me, because facing up to an angry person, and you see what you do is you see beyond the front,
Mm,
right? But to be able to do that, you need to be
mm,
comfortable about your front and your back and your depth too. What are the steps that you took to get there? Because I think in workplace, home fronts, everywhere, we face these kind of uncomfortable situations many a times. What what can someone do to start being mindful or be aware?
First and foremost, you need the practice, of course.
Right.
Basically, the practice can start anywhere. There's thousands of videos on YouTube. You have app like Calm and Headspace and something like that. Excuse me. Or ideally, even if you do all that, you want to find a teacher or someone who can facilitate, someone who actually embodies the practice themselves.
Mm.
Because until you practice with someone who embodies the practice, the experience will be different. Because also coming from the understanding that even if mindfulness or any kind of contemplative practice seems simple, it can have adverse effect on certain people. So people are not aware that it's always underreported, it's always underplayed, that mindfulness can come in different cultures, traditions, and religions. People have contemplative practice in different religions and all that. And sometimes certain religion or certain family members might, inform in certain cultures that, okay, you need to pray, you need to do this, you need to do that, without realizing that some practices can actually um, bring detrimental effects to certain people's psychological experience, and which could be really negative and bring adverse reaction to the person. It might worsen the condition or emotional experience of the person. So to be able to do that, even if you listen to some sort of app or listen to some sort of YouTube video, if you are able to find a teacher or a coach, or someone that can bring that practice, or it doesn't have to be every day, but just maybe attending a monthly workshop, or asking around where you can learn without without having to be in a specific religion or tradition or culture where it's secular.
Mm.
Then
Mm.
it's more open to all, really, to everybody, whether you don't believe in God, or you believe in God, or you believe in certain faiths, whatever gender you are. There is no division.
Right.
I
Right.
think that's really
Right.
important as division. And when you're able to find someone who embodies that and bring that to you, with practice, mindfulness, you really, really bring your awareness to your experience of internal experience, which could be your thoughts, which could be your emotions, which could be your environment, all at the same time. And with practice, you start to become aware that all these things can be outside of you, and you can
Sure.
step back to be just observing all these things, learning to observe rather than being absorbed by
Mm.
whatever that is being experienced around you or within
Nice.
you. So that
Nice.
takes practice, that takes a proper, guide, and yeah.
Nice. What I'm hearing is
Does that
this.
answer your question?
Yes, yeah, no, definitely, definitely. So what I'm hearing is a couple of things. Number one is, yes, tap into the resources, whether you're listening to YouTube, apps, or whichever, but make sure you practice. And most importantly, also have the right teacher. Have the right teacher, right? Because, and while you're
Very
doing this,
important.
you also need to learn to observe and not be absorbed, and I
Mhm.
like that. I like that. Now, I've got a second question, but which is very related with a question that we have from one of our audience, right? Before that, Nimala, yes, hello, hi. She says hi, Malara and Ashok. Okay, so this is a question that we have on LinkedIn, right? I'll read out the question. Malala, you can ping the question up. Hi, all. I would like to know from AJ how trauma survivors in your experience have been able to benefit with these practices in more detail.
Mhm.
So what he or she wants to know is, because you mentioned about trauma, right? So how
Mhm.
can these trauma
Mhm.
survivors been able to benefit with these practices, right? Could you provide more details, maybe a story? And the
Mhm.
second question, follow from there, also how trauma survivors manage the effects of going inwards, which
Sorry,
practices?
Okay.
Ashok.
Remind me of the second while I answer the
I will, I
first.
will, I will.
Before you answer, AJ, can I butt in? Ashok,
Sure.
can we just slow down a little bit? Because I think trauma is a very, very big topic, right? So, Esther, we will handle your question. But before that, because you did say, you did explain to us how you got into the work. and how you are not able to observe and talk to people through because of trauma work. Right? But let's define trauma first, because I think our topic today is adaptive leaders. We're talking about well-being for business sustainability and growth,
Mm.
and a lot of our audiences who are from LinkedIn, they're probably joining us because they want to know what has got this topic got to do with work, got to do with business, got to do with career, right? So let's maybe perhaps, and a lot of us tend to assume, we can assume that trauma belongs in your personal space, right? It may not belong at work. Trauma doesn't happen at work, right? So there could be a lot of assumptions. So let's help us give us a simple, quick definition of what does trauma mean? And first, what does trauma mean? Let's take one thing at a time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mala. Yes. From a simplest way, because I'm not a trauma therapist, but I work with trauma survivors. Trauma or similar to post-traumatic stress disorder that can be considered as trauma. Trauma can be something that is a one-off experience. For example, if you experience an accident or a very eventful life experience that is traumatic, that is being experienced at the time, so that can be a one-off, that it helps over time. You don't have the experience anymore, or you could have a continuous traumatic experience or something that you experience in life continuously. For example, if you've been abused, if you've been abused in a relationship, for example, so you can be in a traumatic experience throughout your lives, and that kind of bring that sense of um, or rather that brings an awareness that you are actually experiencing trauma or post-traumatic stress continuously. So trauma is more about experiencing a traumatic experience. I would say it in layman term. Anyone who experienced some sort of traumatic experience at any time in their lifetime would have experienced trauma. So whether that's a one-off trauma or a continuous experience. So to keep it simple, a continuous experience. For example, you're being bullied throughout your lives, you're being abused throughout your life. That's more towards complex trauma. So there's a lot more layers in them. And surprisingly, there's a lot of that happening in everyday lives, which we do not, realize. You could be abused by your boss, by your leaders. That can become, that can bring so much stress to you. From that stress, it leads to chronic stress. From chronic stress, it leads to post-traumatic stress, and continuous bullying at work, continuous this really toxic attitude can create that, can bring that into a traumatic experience to home and throughout your lives, because you might feel that you're not good enough. That can actually eventually really being absorbed by the person. And if the person has got no support around them, and work is the only support and where they can survive, and it's not safe, then that person will be experiencing trauma. So
Nice, nice.
it's a bit more complex, but in a simplest way, I could say it that way.
So what
Yeah.
I'm hearing, and I'm probably also taking this from the Gabamati's work, that we do. We there could be an event which is clearly traumatic,
Mm.
or it could be a continuous set of small events that
Or
actually
big.
overwhelms, which then becomes a traumatic experience for individuals, right? So he calls it the small t. And I love the fact that, sometimes it's very easy to look at a big trauma, a big event that happens because it's obvious I've been traumatized, right? That I've
Mm.
been injured. The injury is very clear, right? But when we talk about, post-traumatic stress, the layers that you're talking about, let's bring that conversation back to work, right? Could you give us some example? You did give us some example, like bullying at work, right? And now let's bring that, because very often at work we may not use the word trauma, but we use the word stress is very, very acceptable, right? Now, if you can just lead us into, what are common work related stress that you see people experiencing first, which then becomes a PTSD or a traumatic experience for people. So help us transition from daily stresses at work and how stress eventually becomes complex and serious that it becomes traumatic.
I think the good example was what I mentioned earlier on, abusive bosses or abusive leaders.
Mm,
Sometimes it doesn't have to be abusive leaders, it's abusive peers, abusive colleagues. You can
mm.
have a very toxic and abusive colleagues who calls you names or who just say that, you're so lazy, you can't, why am I seeing these 2 lines of work and not ten lines of work when you're supposed, this is laziness. This is, for example, you can use words, can be very powerful, right? We all know that. So when you say something like that, something abusive or something that's condescending, something that brings people down, as simple as, you're not very clever, I could do this better than you, I could do this better than you, that's all it takes. And imagine this is being said to your colleague, to your peers, or to your subordinates, but you don't know this person. At home, this person may have been abusing you, may have been abusing your children, may have been abusing your spouse,
Ashok? Ashok?
Yes, I think AJ's
Meeting is
Wi-Fi got
frozen.
stalled again.
Yeah.
Tell me
Okay.
if you can hear me now. Yes, yes,
Yes, can. You're back. You're back.
Okay, you were
because
frozen
I
for a
see the
bit.
spin.
Okay,
Okay, what?
let's go back to where you stopped, right? What's the
Yeah,
last thing you heard, Ashok?
About abusive colleagues who use words, right?
Mm,
yeah. And
And
then,
that can create a series. Yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
So,
and not,
AJ,
not, re-
sorry, can I
sorry.
just butt in and summarize and see whether I've listened to you? What I heard from the examples that you gave me when you're talking about stress related, examples, right? So two things needs to, what I'm picking up from you is two things, right? When at work, when people, whatever we say or do, or the environment that doesn't make people feel safe or makes people feel not enough, it is stressful, which can then lead to become a traumatic experience for the person. Did I hear you and understand you well?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so two things. One is, people don't feel safe by anything that we do at workplace or in relationship, and the other one is we say things and do things that doesn't make people that makes people feel that they're not good enough. So these are
Mm.
things that lead to work-related stress. Right now, help us now understand, and which can then lead to becoming a traumatic experience. Right now, let's go to Esther's question. She says, um, AJ, how do trauma survivors in your experience being able to benefit from these practices in more detail, right? So we're talking about mindfulness. Now that we know we have stressful experiences at work, which can be traumatic, how can mindfulness help people who are experiencing this at work? Is what Esther is asking. Can we deal with that first?
Yeah, I will answer the not the trauma, but just in
Yeah.
general at work.
Okay.
First and foremost, it all begins with the leaders. So this is a
Mm,
big topic in having well-being strategies, well-being sort of plans or anything that's in work. So if the leaders, for example, if I now bring this, I facilitate mindfulness session with certain organization, for example, yeah, because everybody knows, leaders knows the benefits of mindfulness and how mindfulness can actually cultivate focus, attention, which means better work environment, better work attitudes, and leads to better productivity, better behaviors, better culture. Okay, but in a lot of cases, based on my experience, but I'm in the UK, so it's quite different. The leaders are not there. So until the leaders who provides um, these benefits to the under their well-being strategies to their staff or to their subordinates, until the leaders are involved and understand the experience themselves, then it is quite difficult, or rather the pace will be a lot slower, for people to actually catch up on this, being mindful, being aware, being less judgmental, being kinder to your peers, or between one another, and set up a very kind or kinder environmental culture at your workplace. So so it always starts with a leader, which means that I would definitely encourage, leaders to start experiencing what mindfulness really is. And to start that, you have to do it. To have to do it, you need to start attending or invite people to facilitate mindfulness at your workplace. But if you invite these facilitators at your workplace for your staff, but you are not in it, then you will never understand the experience of being in that situation. You're not in a level playing ground with your subordinates or with your staff. And until you're on a level playing ground between you and the staff, because this is the moment where there is no division, as I said earlier on. It doesn't matter what religion you are, what culture you come from, whichever level you come from, but in mindfulness, you are just there to be in the present experience and exploring your own attitude and behavior, being in that, because it's not easy. Being in stillness or being in a gentle awareness of what's going on in your thoughts, in your emotions, in your attitude is not easy, because sometimes we have unkind thoughts, sometimes we have unkind attitude. How can we be with that in kindness but together?
Nice one. It sounds ideal, like your name, right?
Yes.
Yeah, before I pass on the space to Ashok to ask the question, right? Now, I think in today's business world, leaders are bombarded with so many things that they need to do. But most importantly, leaders are only effective if they bring in the business results, right? And today, we're talking about how do we sustain our business and how do we grow in this rather challenging business environment on one hand. On the other hand, we know that well-being has become one topmost priority in attracting talent, in engaging talent, right? Now, I can see these two, and maybe, we're trying to match this together. But, I'm going to be this horrible leader and ask, hello, can you please tell me why should I now mind your business, right? In terms of why should I learn mindfulness? Because I can, I mean, it's your job to look after yourself. So why does it become a leader's problem now?
I think it's not a leader's problem in that context. The leader's
Okay.
problem is, as you said, leaders need to bring in business, need to look at the P&L, needs to see the key performance, index and all that stuff, all these corporate jargons, that I'm forgetting. But they leaders cannot forget that you cannot do everything on your own. You need your people. You need that connection. If you have zero connection with your people, this is what's happening. It's so much disconnection in a workplace between leaders and first line managers, second line managers. So because the leaders is so disconnected with the first line or head of departments, then you cultivate this culture that where the line managers will have this sense of disconnection with the rest, with other layers within the workplace. And to me, I see this so much disconnection between ourselves. Forget about workplace, between ourselves, there's so much disconnection. And mindfulness, to me, I see it is kind of like bringing back, or rather cultivate this sense of connection between one and another beyond everything else, outside the context of working. It's, and even if it's personal, even if it's work, even if it's other things, but when you come into mindfulness, you are here sitting with yourself in your space of solitude, but you're sharing this space of solitude with everybody else in that particular room, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, but that particular time you're all in the same place. You are actually facing your own judgment, your own self critics, yeah, your own attitudes, whether that's good or bad, and how can we be together in that and still be kind and accepting to whatever the experience may be, to yourself and to one another. And that experience itself can really cultivate a sense of connection between one another. It's
Yeah.
a sense, it's opening space that is safe for everyone to be vulnerable, I would say. It's not easy.
Yeah, sure. Can I? I'm trying to summarize what you say, right? What I'm hearing. I want to just confirm whether I've taken all the wisdom that you've given us here. What I'm hearing is that number one is sitting leaders when we sit through this mindfulness exercise together. Number one is, I reconnect with myself. And this is where my own thoughts, especially, my judgments that I hold, all my thought processes or beliefs that may be contributing to the unkindness at work, which then leads to people not feeling safe or not enough. I now get a lot, give it a space for it to surface so that I become aware. And as a leader, when I'm aware, I'm able to then make the changes that is required for the work environment so that it becomes a safer place for people, which then means, people, I know what are the intervention that we can bring about, the kind of culture we can create so that we make people feel enough. Now, as I do that, we are also helping the rest of the people for them to actually, be more aware of what's happening with themselves. And when we do it together, we then can co-create a culture, an environment, a space where we all can coexist with kindness so that we create that space that we want for ourselves. Is that what it does?
Yes, eventually, you want to work towards just being mindful, really. You want to start cultivating this attitude of kindness and accepting that some things we can't change. It's when we're trying to control everything. Obviously, you need some level of control as a leader, as a head of departments, as staff. But it's the sense of the attitude that we actually deliver during all these communications and this connection that I think that brings that stressful sort of unkindness and stressful communication towards one another. And also being mindless that, don't forget, these people are, we are still human, we still have other experiences outside of our workplace that might be stressful, that might be traumatic. Someone who's going through a relationship breakdown will probably be experiencing trauma because it's a life-changing experience, because they might not have something else that supports them, that has been supporting them all this time. Someone who someone who comes to work by public transport, for example, might have been abused on the way here in a certain way, and we will never know that. We will never, I will never know on face value what Ashok, Mala, anyone here now have experienced in your lifetime, or just in the last 1 hour, last one day. Even as I speak, all of you will have something going on in your mind right now. Maybe self-critic, maybe judging others, maybe judging each one of us in this room. So that's constant, and that's inevitable. That's our default network. We're constantly thinking about something, and the layers and layers of thinking that's going on now, that one of them could be judging ourselves or judging whatever that's going on now. And are we aware of that? And what is our attitude towards that? And and mindfulness will teach us all this awareness within ourselves and environment, and how all this awareness bring us back to the realization that we're not really alone in this world. Your actions is probably mirroring my attitude or my actions as well. So how can we build a bit kinder to one another and bring this disconnection to a better state, by being in the same space, open and safe space where we're all vulnerable. And yet, build that sort of connection where you can still do your own thing. I'm still me. I still have my beliefs. You still have your beliefs, but yet, this is totally a different level. It kind of opened up that space that it's okay, even if I'm judgmental, even if I'm not kind in my thoughts, I accept that. I will take actions, maybe kinder actions towards maybe connecting again in a way that is slightly different.
Mm. Thanks for sharing that. What I'm hearing consistently from you, okay, I know you said it's leaders' responsibility. Before we go into an in-depth discussion about that, continuously what I'm hearing from you is the need for self-love and the need for connection, connection, connection. Because you even stated earlier, we are already disconnected. Forget about the office space. We are all disconnected. And you kept saying about connection. And and I want to relate to compassion in that, because that's where I see the relationship between compassion and connection. Now, do you have any stories or examples that you have observed before about how compassion has worked well in a workplace
Yes.
or connection?
I will speak of a bit of connection and disconnection
Please, please,
first.
please.
Yeah. A lot of us are really disconnected. When I say disconnection, it's not only disconnection between me and you and your colleague, you and your boss and you, and all that stuff. We are so disconnected with ourselves. So that's the main thing, really. You might notice that some people, or a lot of people that I know, I'm aware these are people that I work with, there is always a time to go do really vigorous stuff. Everything is so dynamic, everything is moving and moving, especially in our culture in Southeast Asia, KL, Malaysia, Singapore, and everything is, it's gung-ho, right? It's like in a culture of corporate, these are all going fast. Excuse me. So being in a slower pace, having to sit with yourself, having to just take a few moments of breathing and allowing, just facing or just be with yourself, is actually very challenging. And this is challenging because when you learn to sit with yourself and you bring this awareness to your internal environment, internal experience, whether that is your thoughts, your emotions, how you feel in your body, which you probably never realize because we're always moving, not paying attention. When you start to pay attention, you realize that you might even come into a state where you're very vulnerable because you're in a relaxed state, and you realize there's so much going on inside of you, but that you have forgotten about yourself. So you've been disconnected because you don't want to face all these difficulties, whether you're in your personal relationship or your work relationship. We've just kind of like brush it off. And because tomorrow we're going back to work, right? Tomorrow we're going back to work, we're going back to the house. We're still going to be abused for some people. We're still going to go face this stress. So we're very, very disconnected. We're moving so fast that we're forgetting all the experiences that is happening in this body, in this emotion, in these thoughts. And of course, in different traditions, you have all these practices. But when you allow this space to be with yourself, and you make an effort to be kind, that will lead you to exploring that space of compassion. It's like this self-compassion and compassion for others. And it's easier, unfortunately, a lot of research shows that it's easier for people to be compassionate to others, but not for yourself. And it's common, even I notice that. So it's like, okay, I will help you, blah blah blah, I will help you. Someone is not kind to you, or I'm really angry with this friend because someone has been kind and you don't say anything. Yeah. But if it happens to me, someone says something nasty, maybe my friend will feel the same way, but I will back off, and I'm not able to say that. Not being able to say no is not giving yourself self-compassion. It's like, for example, you're really, really tired today. You really need to be with yourself. You really need this space. And yet, when your good friend asks you, said, oh, can you please help me this? Or can we go have tea anyway? I need to speak. You can't say no because you're feeling this guilt that, oh, I feel sorry for this person. I need to be there for this person. But at that moment, if you need to be with yourself, you are not servicing yourself and giving yourself self-compassion. It is from your self-compassion that you cultivate more compassion for others, actually, evidence-based. So the more you cultivate self-compassion, as simple as being able to say, no, not today. I love you. You're my friend. You're my family. But today, I do not have space for this. Today, I need to be with myself. And you come back to that mindfulness, being with yourself, be giving yourself compassion. And from there, you cultivate more compassion for others. I hope that it's clear, answering your question, Ashok.
Yeah, I understand. I get that from I mean, I totally get everything you're saying. I totally agree. the importance of self-love, especially about self-compassion, because once you know yourself and you have that deep level of self-compassion, it's easier to empathize and deliver the same to the outside. I get that. And I want to bring it back to the workplace. Can this type of mindfulness, can people have misconceptions about mindfulness at workplace? Or from your experience, what are the common misconceptions that you have seen about mindfulness at the
Mm.
workplace?
Uh, First, there's a lot of misconception about mindfulness. Again,
Okay.
if I may reiterate, mindfulness is a form of meditation. Not all meditation is mindfulness.
Mm.
Meditation also misconception. Meditation is not a form of relaxation. Just so people know that when people say, "Oh, I feel so relaxed after meditation," meditation is not relaxation. The byproduct of meditation ignites certain parts of your brain, certain parts of physiological reactions, that it gives you that sense of relaxation. Yeah, so mindfulness and meditation is like giving you the space to be with yourselves, and the repetition of that over and over again, the byproduct of that, you can allow yourself to be calm, to be more relaxed. So, to answer your question, sorry, what was the question again about
What are
misconceptions? Or at
misconceptions that
work?
you see about mindfulness at the workplace?
From my side in UK, some misconception, people tend to be a bit maybe apprehensive or not receptive, some people, because they say, "Oh, this is meditation, hoo hoo ha ha," but everybody talks about mindfulness. Mindfulness is just a secular name, like talk about mindfulness. But I think people get it wrong in a way that in most cases they think it's a relaxation. That's the biggest thing, really, relaxation.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
But as I said, mindfulness is actually sort of a mind training practice.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it's it's
And
a,
I
it's a
think
form
I
of mind
think
training.
you talked about it in the very beginning when you said you see things, you listen with different ears, and you see things with different eyes,
Mm.
and that is the mind training. And I think you hit it in the nail in the head when you said people get the wrong idea when we talk about mindfulness in the workplace. You think, oh, this is time to relax, but I think it is about being aware, attentive
Mm.
to what the pains your colleagues might be going through, or what are the issues your colleagues could be going through. It's observing their words, their
It's
expressions.
it's it's basically observing yourselves, really observing your own attitude, your own experience, but at the same time, you know that your colleagues are doing the same thing, or your leaders are with you. So you understand, because when you sit together, you know what you're going through. And unless the person sits with you, they will never know what you're going through because they don't experience it. So this is why the involvement of leaders in this sort of session is important, because if the leaders provide you this safe mindfulness at work, and
Mhm.
all of you are doing it, or 50% of you are doing it, you will never understand the vulnerability of these people who's practicing it. So if you sit with your colleague, with your subordinates, and you sit there for a few times, maybe 5 6 times, and you experience something happening in you, whether it's changing or not, or whatever that's happening, because don't forget, there's also adverse reactions. So if you're experiencing adverse reactions, or you're experiencing something positive, when
Mhm.
you experience all this, then you understand what others would be experiencing, and that
Sure,
creates a space of sharing
sure.
on a
Now,
different level.
I get that. I just want to ask you, Chris, in regards to one of the leaders who came on our show some time back, uh, what he told us was at the end of the day, he does a reflection of his actions. Now, I can't remember whether he said it's journaling, but a reflection of the actions at the end of the day. Would you say this is part of mindfulness, mind training as a leader?
Absolutely. Journaling, reflection, self reflection is part of mindfulness. Self reflection through journaling. So, journaling doesn't mean that you only have to write. Journaling can be drawing your experience,
Okay.
expressing. expressing your thought experience, expressing your emotional experience, expressing your experience in a whole and your attitude towards maybe just splashing some colors, maybe through drawing and sketches, maybe through doodling. But you can also express that through journaling by voice. You could record your expression for yourself, not share with others maybe. But that's also a form of journaling. And reflect when, because imagine you record yourselves, like we record this conversation, right? And then we look at ourselves again. And then you start noticing, we start to criticize ourselves, you know, all this we're criticizing, and then we maybe reflect on that again. And then as we do that, as we look at our writing, our manifestation or whatever that we want to write or journal in our own way, we will still be judging it, but we want to be aware of that. So you can do many things on different layers, as you're doing it, as I'm speaking now. But how are we aware of this attitude of all these judgments that's coming, of all these critics?
Nice.
And you reflect on it in between. So yeah, definitely journaling and self-reflection is part of
Sure.
mindfulness journey.
And I think that's a very good key takeaway that you've given for the leaders here, because even before they sit down and be present with their colleagues, I think this is the first step that they can take, right? Be still with themselves, practice that first, whether they want to lean on resources or whether lean on a good teacher, which is important. That when you share what you said, and then after that, bring that into the office space also. Right now, I know from what Muller has been sharing is there's something very interesting about you, a research or some studies that you've been doing about sleep.
Mm.
Can you share with us
Mindfulness.
some of your key insights about your latest study about sleep? And I want to relate it back to the office also.
Yes, I was doing this research. I'm still in it. I'm doing this research about the role of mindfulness in sleep disturbance for people affected by sleep disturbance by post-traumatic stress. Um, it's very interesting because when I say sleep disturbance, it means you might find it difficult to go to sleep, or you don't have enough sleep, or when you get up from sleep, you can't go back to sleep if you go to the toilet, or um, if you worry and all that stuff. Uh, um, and what I found is this is just following. There's so many research on it about how sleep affects your emotional regulation. Excuse me, about sleep how affects how sleep can bring a lot of illness and diseases, because sleep really is where it's healing, right? So and what I found is actually it's not about the role of mindfulness in sleep. It's not about mindfulness make you sleep better, but it's about the role of mindfulness or any kind of open awareness contemplative practice, where you start to be aware of your thoughts, your emotions, your experience, your bodily sensations, your true experience about dealing with people, your true emotions about maybe you don't really like something but you have to say yes. Maybe you don't really want to do something but you have to say yes because you're used to, that's what you're used to. And changing is tough, especially if you're changing against the norm, against the society norm, and what I realize is it's not about the sleep, it's about our attitude towards all these experiences. And there is more awareness that is happening. Yeah. And you realize, actually, I do this, but I never notice why I do it when I actually don't like it. And all this awareness starts to come in, and you start to be more aware of your sensations in the body. You start to be aware of your experience. You start to be kinder to yourself. You start to be able to say no, because actually I don't know why I said yes. I'm not in a space to have this today, but I still say yes because I'm mindless, right? I just say yes because it's okay, because everybody will say yes. Really? Why? So you really explore and come back, as I said, to what I should say, come back to self-reflection, being able to take a step back and really ask yourself, why are you here? What is your intention? You always also come back to intention. And all this awareness actually kind of like lessen your own struggles or internal um I forgot the word actually, internal struggles within yourself emotionally, and the realization of all this makes you sleep better actually, because all this time, you're refusing to acknowledge this experience because you're not being truthful to yourself. A lot of us, I can guarantee, are not being truthful to ourselves. We say something to please someone. We say something so we're not offensive because culturally it's wrong not to do it, or it's wrong not to say yes or not to agree. And we actually, again, that is a sign of disconnection with the self. You are ignoring your self needs because you have no self compassion with yourself, and you are agreeing to others because we don't want to connect with ourselves. It's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It takes a lot of practice and awareness and
Yeah,
understanding.
yeah. And you know what? I've never seen the connection between sleep and mindfulness in that way, but thank you for sharing because, again, I think you said something very important. That was a big secret there. It always boils back to your intention.
Mm.
So when you're looking at mindfulness, when you're looking at your attitudes, your actions, your emotions, it is also asking yourself about your intentions. And I think by observing that is where the shifts happens also. And I like that. Always come back to the intentions. And all of this also helps with sleep, which also helps with healing, right?
How it helps, as I was mentioning again, yes, intention is a big part. Everything. Well, no matter what you do, just first thing first, intention, number one.
Intention.
And again, the why it's sleep, how it's affecting it, most cases it's positive because mindfulness help with emotional regulation, being
Mm,
aware, with your attitude, being aware with everything changes your attitude really after a while. You're a bit more aware with practice, with the proper guidance, and that brings, when you have, because emotional regulation is connected to sleep, it has relationship, and dysregulation is also affected in relation to your sleep. So it works together. You are, if you have bad sleep, you
yeah.
become moody and everything, emotional
Mm,
dysregulation. And certain practices, certain training, or certain therapy
mm,
addresses the mostly emotional regulation or
sure.
dysregulation.
Sure.
Yeah, but that's why I'm just like, okay, why people are not looking at sleep? I said, like they are very little. I thought, just sleep. This is again related to my work with trauma survivors, which I can,
Mhm.
explain, because one of the main things when I work over the years with trauma survivors, the first thing they come to me after a few months or after a few weeks is like, thank you. I like coming to this session because it makes me sleep better. Or
Sure.
thank you, I can sleep. Sleep is a big deal for people who have sleep issues.
Sure.
Bowel movement is a big deal for people who constipate all week. It's a big deal.
Sure.
It may sound so insignificant, but it's a life transforming, life transforming to
Sure.
people, to generally a lot of people.
Yeah. And I can see how being mindful and making sure that you sleep well also has an impact on business sustainability and growth in that sense. And I can see why you always talked about the leader is the most important here. Now, we are 1 minute away from closing the show, right? Assuming if you do not have a leader who has not jumped in yet, and if there's an individual contributor listening in here, how can they start the journey? What's your last advice for someone who's coming in there? Say, what's your last advice? And while you think about that, I just want to again say thank you to Sin Fong Chan, who said his way of journaling is taking photos because that, to him, a picture paints 1,000 words. So thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I will answer questions if you have any more. But to your question, as a leader, for me, this is I always recommend. I kind of like the corporation that I work with. I kind of like, if I find research and everything, I say, okay, you can do this. Like recommending. Really, first and foremost, at workplace, for me as a leader, I would create a space that is a space of solitude. I would say,
Sure.
maybe a
Actually, my
green
question was
space.
assuming the leader is not in that space, or what can an individual contributor do? An
Uh,
individual.
uh, uh, Nature. Finding
Nature.
space in nature.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the easiest. You know, just having to have your feet on the ground, feeling your feet on the ground, feel the space around you, visualize that you're actually being held by the space and the ground beneath you. 3 minutes, pay attention to your breath. That's all it takes.
Nice, nice. So be
Yeah.
with nature. So anyone here logging in, right? Remember, just be with nature, foot firmly on the ground. Breathe, observe your breath for 3 minutes. That's the start of being mindful about your own self-compassion, and that will start the ball rolling with enough practice with the right teachers over time for you to practice self-compassion so that you will be compassionate to the people around you, which could then also then help you in your work performance, right? Thank you very much for that, AJ. And Muller, for you to close.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I think my greatest takeaway from all that AJ said was very much, I think mindfulness seemed to be an exercise to deal with the truth that never had a chance to surface because you're so busy living your life mindlessly, right? And that was and I thought that for me that was a big takeaway, AJ, to know how mindfulness leads to better sleep. Because when we are not dealing with the truth that's residing in our system, we lose sleep because somewhere in our system it's disrupted, right? And that causes the disruption in sleep. So I've not seen that. And I think for me, my greatest takeaway is that when we become more aware, we become, when we reflect, we then start thinking about the truth that we really hold within and whether we are living it, and change the way we think we live, and become more mindful in the way we live, and that perhaps will lead us to the well-being that we are looking for. And of course, in leadership, in Flow Asia, what we're looking at is that when we want to bring about optimal performance, it's really about first, uh, can I be well as a person? Because that means I can be totally be engaged in life, right? And minimize the stress, the unnecessary stress in life, specifically at work in this case. So thank you very much, AJ. Before we say goodbye, is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience before we say goodbye to you?
Yes, before anything, leaders or not, again, a reminder, intention is everything. Intention of what you feel, everything comes back to intention. And for those answers about trauma, if you want to just get in touch with me, I'm able to share the experience because we are running out of time already. So we can, revisit that later on. But yeah, everything is intention, everything, leaders or not.
Nice.
And thank
Thank you
you,
very
everybody, for being here.
Thank
And thank
you
you,
very
Mala and
much,
Ashok.
AJ. Thank you.
much.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
So, as we say goodbye to AJ, I did think that AJ answered Esther's question, indirectly, because Esther was asking, if you're a trauma survivor and you're having
Sure.
all these negative reactions, what do you do? And I thought, that bit on mindfulness and what surfaces and dealing with what surfaces
Mm,
actually would really help anyone, but
yeah.
specifically in this case, trauma survivors. Esther, I hope it answered your question. If it didn't, well, do get in touch with AJ. With that, this is Malor signing off from Kuala Lumpur and wishing all those who have joined us, all of you who have joined us quietly, wishing you a mindful moments ahead.
All right. And this is Ashok from Singapore. Happy mindfulness to everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Bye.
night. Bye.